how can actual leaders become more self-aware of their biases when they're actually happening? Well, my name is Sheriane, and I'm here at Berteig. Obviously, I'm an Agile consultant, but I'm also in training. Yeah.
Okay, I'm Mishkin Berteig, and I'm an Agile coach and business person, and I'm looking forward to our discussion about leadership and bias.
Okay, so obviously we know having biases is part of like the human condition, and we're told not to be biased about things. But I also feel like it's inherent and you can't really help it. And from what I'm noticing in the role of like an Agile consultant or their line of work, I definitely think that we see them all the time. We definitely see cognitive bias all the time, people taking mental shortcuts, and they tend to play a pretty big role in how leaders make decisions or higher ups or executives. So like a big one is always that we see the leader who is interested in making their organization agile and they want their teams to become more self-organizing, or that's what they hoped for, and yet they're not able to do it. They don't want to give them the authority to like self-organize.
Yeah.
And we know this comes from a bias, and from what I'm gathering, it's about making safe choices. But with that being said, so how can actual leaders become more self-aware of their biases when they're actually happening?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I think that a lot of it has to do with just educating oneself on what those cognitive biases even are. There's some that people are pretty familiar with, like confirmation bias, for example.
Right.
That's well known. But there's a lot of other biases that are extremely important to be aware of. And I know you've been reading a book about these. Do you want to say anything about that before I say more?
Oh yeah, I think one of the biggest ones that I see all the time is the sunk cost fallacy one. And I think me and you actually always say this all the time too, is that most decisions that are made are pretty emotional. And I know that, or at least I've heard so many times in business, like, leave your emotions at the door. Nobody wants that in this meeting. And the funny thing is that that's where all decisions are actually driven. And the more people invest in something, or the more time they put in, or they put some sort of investment into it, the more they like hang on or grip on to like whatever work or thing that they were working on. I don't want to say it becomes an obsession necessarily, but people want to take pride in their work, and I get it. So that is one that I definitely see all the time. The more you put in, the more you want to keep it going, essentially.
Yeah. So where would someone go to read about all of these different biases, for example?
I can give them my reference.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Cohen.
Yeah, this is a fantastic book. And I mean, honestly, if you're in any management or leadership position, definitely, it's worth a read. It has dozens of chapters. Each one is about a specific type of bias. A lot of them are related to statistics or decision making, and they're all really fascinating little stories. Like each chapter is kind of a little story. And there's a lot of them. And so leaders, one of the things that's an interesting bias, I forget what it's called, but we have this bias that whatever success and achievement we've made in our lives is due to our own character, hard work, innate intelligence, skills, decision-making abilities, when actually, I hate to say it, a huge amount of our success is our environment, chance, luck of the draw. I mean, even if you don't believe in chance per se, those environmental factors have such a huge component. A really simple example, like how many times do you get in your car and not die? Right? So there's all these situations where there's so much that's outside of your control, or not get sick, or not have someone undermine you unexpectedly in the work environment. And so management and leadership, yes, absolutely. There is a component which is good decision making and skill and so forth. But this is probably for a lot of leaders the most fundamental bias to embrace and understand, that your position, your success, only a small component of that was your own innate ability or value or worth, and that there's some interesting studies about this, and I'm not sure if I believe the details, but for example, there's some estimates that 70% of a person's success in life is attributable to their environment, their circumstances, the even to the point of when you were born. The folks like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, for example, yeah, they were smart people, absolutely. But they were also born at a very specific time in the history of technology. They had very specific family environments that gave them a leg up. They were, quote unquote, in the right place at the right time as well. And it's true, absolutely amazing individuals, but that also that played a factor, but also the environment played a factor. So becoming aware of biases, educate yourself, but honestly, the first and foremost is actually to have a little bit of humility to say, you know what, I might not be the greatest thing since sliced bread. I might just be kind of lucky. And that's a good way to start, because then it starts to affect your decision making. Oh, what are the circumstances? This isn't just about my talent, my good decisions. What are the circumstances that might play a role in the success or failure of things that happen in the future? Lots of it we can't control. Some of it we can influence, and very little of it we can control. But yes, there is something there to do as well. I don't know, but there's tons of biases.
Yeah.
So it's really important to just get educated on those.
I think the one that you were talking to earlier was fundamental attribution error.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the one specifically, because our environment definitely plays an impact. And with all due respect to anybody, it's just, I think people tend to overestimate themselves a little bit, because it kind of has to be the perfect storm of everything coming together to make that success happen or work.
Yeah, and then actually, I think if I recall correctly, part of fundamental attribution error is also the reverse, that typically when people fail, like there's this kind of sense that if you fail, it's the environment, you blame it on the environment. If someone else fails, you blame it on their lack of skill, lack of capacity, lack of character or whatever. And that's part of that fundamental attribution error. We judge ourselves, generally speaking, differently than we judge other people. If someone succeeds, oh, it was all luck. But when we succeed, no, it was our skill, our character, our moral fiber, right? Our destiny. So yeah, absolutely, fundamental attribution error.
Yeah, I would definitely second that on what you said about humility, if that's the case. People really got to take their ego off it. Not everything is about us. Not everything is, we play some role in the facilitation of it, but I just don't think it boils down to one specific person.
Yeah. I want to give an example of that, actually, like in my own life. So, 2005, I was doing some agile coaching at a company, and I had a friend working with me. Her name was Shabnam Tashakor. And he and I had these conversations about, the business and stuff like that. And she recommended to me, I was talking about, oh, what should I do next? Should I do this or that? And, I gave her some of the things that I was thinking about doing, but I really had no clue. I want to be honest. I really had no clue. And she said, well, you've got this opportunity to become a certified Scrum trainer by working with Ken Schwaber, one of the founders of Scrum. And I was like, yeah, I'm not sure I want to do that, blah, 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 blah. And she really encouraged me. She kind of pushed me actually to do that. And it's not that I was resistant. I was just I was kind of tepid about it. I was like, it's going to be a hassle. And, but it turns out that that's one of the biggest decisions in my career. It was huge. And I'm still a certified Scrum trainer to this day. I still do training. And a huge aspect of the success of my business is rooted in, this completely different person making a decision for me, basically, because I didn't really decide. I mean, I've talked to people and they say, yeah, but you have to go do it. Yes, of course, I accepted the decision, but I didn't really make it myself.
Yeah.
And I went along with it. And not only that, the fact that I even had that opportunity was also largely luck. So, I know that about myself, and I owe a huge gratitude to Shabnam for pushing me. It's made a huge difference in my life. A very, very personal, specific example, right?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Yeah. One question I did have though was about because I know you mentioned that education, and I would agree too. I do think educating about certain biases and just doing a little bit of research on that to see where someone's pain points might be a little bit. But where else do you think that someone might be able to actually become more self-aware of that as it's happening?
Yeah, so again, I want to build on this idea of humility. I'm not the most humble guy in the world. I struggle with it. I know that I want to be humble, but sometimes I'm definitely not. And so there's a journey of self-awareness that has to happen. And I don't claim to be arrived or anything like that. But I know that over the years, as I've had experiences, I've tried to reflect on them in a way to ask myself some pretty important questions, like, did I do the right thing? And I mean that in a lot of different ways, practically, ethically, all that kind of stuff. And am I doing the right thing specifically for other people in my life? And I think that's a big part of it, is being conscious and conscientious of the other people in your life, really, really wanting to serve. And, I got to attribute this to someone else. I got this attitude of service and the importance of service from my parents. I don't think that there was anything in my upbringing other than their encouragement that would have made me think of service as being important. So when you're in the moment with an employee or a team, or you're facilitating something, a meeting with your peers or something like that, starting those meetings by taking a few seconds to think about, am I in the right mental state, right? And of course, if you're not in the right mental state, sometimes it can be hard to get into the right mental state. You might be grumbly from a bad sleep last night, or or from a previous meeting that didn't go the way you wanted it to, or a report that you got that shows the TPS system is totally bonkers, or whatever. The thing is that when you're in a particular mood that encourages defensiveness, control, or reactivity in general, you're not going to be coming to those kinds of situations with the right attitude to even be able to handle biases. Again, there's a great book. It's called Mastering Leadership, and I forget the authors, but I think one of them, his last name is Anderson. I think there's two authors, but this book is kind of dry. I'm not going to say it's a great book to read, but it has some really great concepts in it. And so it's worth reading the first few chapters, and then skimming. And it talks about how one of the things that I got out of it that's really interesting is a model for adult maturity. Now, this model, again, there's some dispute about it. It's not like 100% or anything like that, but basically the model has several levels of adult maturity, and they start off with the egotistical level, and then it goes up to the reactive level, which is basically that when you're in a reactive level of maturity, mostly you're a functional adult. You're able to protect your loved ones. You're able to control certain things about your life and your behavior. You can make your way through the world. And according to this book, I don't remember the exact number, but something like 60 or 70% of adults are at that stage of maturity. And if you're a manager or a leader, you can get by with that, but it's not great. You're going to be stressed, you're going to be frustrated, you're going to be blaming other people for problems, very little sort of introspection. And so the next level of maturity that the book mentions is the creative level. And for what it's worth, I don't really like that term. It doesn't quite describe what I think it should describe. But it's a level of maturity where you're able to look at the systems view, the community. You're able to look at your relationships, and I think the creative part is that you're no longer reacting to things that happen to you. Instead, you are creating the environments and the systems and the tools and the environment. I said environment. Anyway, the things that you need to make your organization progress effectively, your team, your staff. And there's further levels beyond that. So I'm going to mention them just because they're interesting. After creative comes integral, and after integral comes unitive. And these are levels where if you come across someone who's at the integral or unitive levels, for example, often they kind of have like almost like a guru-like feel to them. They're just so incredibly warm and loving and self-sacrificing, and they can still be leaders in businesses, right? Like they're not, there's still the practical side of things. It's not all foo-foo, la, 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 but they create a different kind of culture in their organization. So again, according to this book, I don't remember the exact amount, but about 20% of leaders and managers are at the creative level. That's that third level. And so part of it is self-awareness, like to be able to say, yeah, you know what? honestly, most of the time I am reacting or protecting or controlling or complying, right? And so that's the reactive level versus, oh, you know what? Actually, most of the time I'm building relationships. I'm trying to be aware of how the system impacts people. I'm really authentic, and I'm focused on getting things done, but I'm doing it without commanding everyone and ordering everyone. Instead, I'm creating an environment of motivation, and a sense of purpose for people and so forth. So long thing that I just said there. Sorry, but one of the things that people can do very practically is to start with some assessments, right? So there's a lot of common ones out there, like DISC, for example, or Myers-Briggs. These are basic, try them out. I don't particularly like them that much. There's another assessment that I do like. This could be just confirmation bias because I invested a bit of time and money in it, but and it's called the Leadership Circle Profile. Another one that we have that's maybe a little indirect but might help you get to your company culture and see about these things is the assessment that we do called the Real Agility Assessment. But the idea is if you do these assessments and you look at the results sincerely, you will always learn something. And I think I almost don't think it matters that much what assessment you use. Learning about yourself is, like these assessments can just help you reflect in ways that you wouldn't otherwise reflect. And that can in turn then help you build on your knowledge of biases to see those biases in yourself, and then start to work on rooting them out, which is hard.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine so, especially because they're so ingrained into us.
Yeah.
I did have another question just regarding actually its failure. So I know you mentioned, I forget what it's already, you said there's a couple above creative. What was the last?
Integral and unitive.
Yes. So for the unitive or the integral leader, how would you actually say the way they deal with failure is different from even like the creative or the reactive?
Boy, that's a good question, which I'm not sure I can answer really completely. So first of all, I don't really have any way of knowing, for example, if I'm at those levels. I aspire to it. I see the value of maturing my own psychology, my perspective on the world, and how that affects my behavior. But so how do people at that level of maturity respond to failure? Well, I'm not sure, because I'm not sure that I am at that level. So therefore I can't look to myself. And then also, when I look to other leaders that I know, not very many of them have been that great, frankly. And so I can speculate. Okay, so that's kind of a disclaimer. I can speculate. Okay, so part of what I think would happen in those kinds of leadership environments is that, first of all, and this is something that every agilist should know, failure is an opportunity for learning and improvement. Okay, but I think that's already at the creative level. I don't know if that's integral or unitive, right? But failure is an opportunity to learn and grow. Also, we should always be looking first at the system to see if the failure is in the system rather than blaming individuals. And again, that's already in the creative level. That's, again, not necessarily integral or unitive. I think that, so here's where I'm speculating. I think that those who are at the integral or unitive level will actually enjoy failure. Like there will be no psychic dissonance, like, oh, this really sucks, and what can we learn from it? Right? I think that probably also at that level, leaders will deliberately create failure modes to help people learn. So, I don't know anything about Netflix's leadership, but I do know, for example, that one of the cool things that Netflix does with their technology is that they deliberately stress it. They deliberately cause failures in their technology to see how their overall technology systems respond and react to those failures in order to, make their systems better. And so they're proactively failing.
Yeah, no, it's like it's done on purpose is what you're essentially saying.
Yeah, exactly. So gosh, proactively failing. Wow, that sounds awful. And
How you look at it.
yeah, and so if you're a manager in an organization, and you're kind of stuck between executives who demand results and your staff who want to just have a great work environment, and those things aren't matching up, and you start talking about, hey, we're going to deliberately fail, everyone's going to hate you. Right? It's like your executives are going to say, what the hell are you on about? I mean, get out of here. And your staff are going to resent you. So, there's an important question here, which is also how you communicate about and approach failure. Like one of the things I teach students in my classes is that we want fast feedback. We never deliberately fail in something like Scrum, for example, or Kanban. We never deliberately fail, but we do want to set up systems so that we can have fast feedback. But then going the next step, what about deliberately failing? I don't know.
I mean, I would definitely say and this is just me making a broad statement about what I've just seen in life, is that you pretty much never know till you actually push the button, if that makes sense. And I mean, I do it in my own life sometimes, depending on what it is. So sure. When you jump, you fly. That's what I say. So.
Yep. Cool. Yeah. Any other questions?
Well, I think it's just more observational now at this point, because now I'm really curious about the integral and the unitive level, because I think at this point so far, I've heard much about the reactive and a lot about the creative, not so much about the other two.
Yeah.
But it's exactly as you said. Not many people get to that level, and I think I was actually just reading an article 10 minutes maybe before we hopped on here. You're correct. I think their statistic was a little bit more generous. I think they said about 80% make it to the creative level, which makes me wonder about the other levels, because it's not that high as when you think about it. But I would like to actually see some live real world examples of that and take an evaluation. Yeah, I would too. Maybe we all should. Yeah.
Well, maybe a last statement about this is that so I've recently started to get coaching myself as a leader, and it took me a long time to have the humility and openness to do that. And it's one of those things where that might be a sign. It might be, hey, if a person is willing to get coaching and proactively looks for it and works with a coach or multiple coaches on different aspects of their life, I think that's a sign that there's at least some humility. I know for me it is, right? I had to give up some ego to to get to the point where I would hire a coach. So, yeah.
It's all good. Acknowledgement is always the first step. That's what they say.
Yeah.